Okay, we'll call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Can I have roll call, please?
Alderman LaVerie.
Present.
Alderman Thompson. Alderman Jepson.
Present.
Alderman Crane. Chairman Patak.
Here.
You got a quorum.
Thank you. Totally counts.
Yeah.
Okay, on the agenda, call the order discussion and potential recommendation regarding potential adoption of the ordinance and resolution retained through the Illinois Finance Authority PACE program and related matters.
Actually, I believe our city engineer Brian Brown has more expertise in the second item, and he does have to leave early. So we may want to move the second item to the first, if that's all right with the committee.
Okay, move to go out of order. Second.
A motion on the floor by Alderman LaVerie, second by Alderman Jepson to go out of order. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
That's Robert's rules.
All right.
Okay. Discussion of potential recommendation regarding consideration of an application to Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for inclusion in the River Edge redevelopment zone and related matters.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for being here. So I have given you guys probably a slurry of information. So unless you have specific questions, I'm not going to go into great details with that information because you've already been provided that. I will give a little bit of a background on this. Earlier last year, the governor had signed documentation that allowed certain communities along the Illinois River to be a part of this River's Edge redevelopment zone, and LaSalle qualified for as one of those municipalities. However, once I contacted them and learned of the qualifications, with anything there's restrictions and some barriers and things of that nature. It quickly became clear that we were in a unique situation given that the river bends outward from our river's edge compared to the other communities. In consideration for that, you would have to, one of the qualifications was the river's edge had to be within 1,500 yards of the proposed area. So we discussed this with the gentleman in charge. His name is Ben Denny, and he came up and visited with myself and Brian, and we did a tour of the town, as well as took him out all the way over there, over the bridge on 351, and covered that area as well, so that he could have a better understanding of where our community lies in relation to the river and such. Brian also drew up a map that we submitted to them for consideration. We basically took into consideration the corner edges of the river. So this far edge over by Illinois Cement, and then over here where our city limits are. That kind of gave us the parameters for covering that 1,500 yards, and it forms a triangle basically from the river up to about, I think it was around 5th Street. And so it mainly encompasses most of the downtown, if not all of the downtown area, which would be most beneficial for this type of programming. Kind of think of it as the enterprise zone, which is something that they compared it to, but if you were to do it, you would have to either choose between this program and the enterprise zone. You couldn't do both. So, given the information and our qualifications, the map that we submitted, we have been qualified enough to go forward to the application process. So we're not officially part of this yet. We have to fill out an application in order to be a part of it. And so that's mainly what this meeting is about, to answer your questions, as well as to get a approval and recommendation to move forward with that application.
So if the state names LaSalle, they named how many new locations? Moline, East Moline, Ottawa, LaSalle, Peru, and Quincy. wouldn't, if they named this a location, wouldn't we automatically be qualified? Wouldn't they know that?
You would think, but just like anything, you have to go through the hoops and everything that goes along with these types of programs.
So then, by the state naming these locations, each city has to
Yes.
verify that. Okay,
Yes.
they're all going through this process.
Correct.
Or they have been and have been approved.
Gotcha.
I think Rockford is approved, right? They've gone through the process.
Yeah.
But that was like 10 years ago. That group, right?
Yeah. That was like
So,
the first initiation of it.
Aurora, East St. Louis, Elgin, Peoria, Rockford were like in 2015.
Right.
So we're new. This is right. This was just signed in June. From what I'm reading.
Correct.
So like Moline, East Moline, Ottawa, LaSalle, Peru, Rock Island, and Quincy. All right.
When you were measuring from the river, did Hughes Lake or what we call the large basin leading to the river count
No.
those points? No.
The floodplain, all of that. I tried to get the I&M Canal is considered as part of the backwaters. No, it's so I basically took the north edge of the bank and offset it 4,500 feet, 1,500 yards, and that developed the map. And
it's almost a mile, not quite. Yeah.
yeah, it takes a considerable amount of the downtown area in Fifth, 6th Street as you go for a little further east as the river bends back to the north, that encompasses more of that property. But it's getting to the east end of our downtown area, and so it doesn't have quite the reach. There's the map. You can see. So I guess it's most of 3rd Street. It doesn't go all the way up to 5th.
So that's the area that we're applying for with the state.
Correct.
That's all that's eligible in our.
Well, and really, that's what you're looking at doing. It's for your community redevelopment zone. So
Right.
it's a downtown kind of redevelopment.
Yeah. Some of the topics that you have been given was dividend income deduction, interest income deduction, new construction job credits, building materials sales tax exemption, and property tax abatement.
Now, then when I was reading there, the property tax abatement would be considered by the zone administrator. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then, who would be the zone administrator? Is that something like each zone, like will LaSalle be its own zone? Like that would be LaSalle's zone then?
Right.
So then, who is appointed the administrator? How is that done?
I guess that would be something that would have to be discussed internally. If, in some technical instances, that would be me.
Okay.
Working with the state.
Okay. Because what I'm reading there is up to the zone administrator if they abate the property tax, correct?
Correct.
I would think that would be a big incentive. That would be a big part of this.
Yes.
Do other communities do that? Like the older one, like Rockford, like the application or the.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why you saw a lot of improvements in downtown Rockford, right along the riverfront, was through a lot of that.
Because the other thing that I would actually, right. But the other thing I saw there was the historic tax credit.
Yes.
So, and does that tax credit go federal and state?
I don't know if you could technically double dip.
On that one Prairie Brewing Company, they showed historical for federal and state, and I was curious if that falls underneath this, because this is a state program.
Yeah, I'd have to look.
All right.
And you recall we did set up a historic.
Yes. So all the buildings in this will qualify for historical.
All of them in this zone are in that historic district.
Okay.
Or what? It's not a. I don't know if it's really considered a federally, like a federal historic. It's one that we set up.
Yes.
As part of a historic to get those credits. And
also Rockford could be different. They might have a.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right. The way I look at this is, why wouldn't we do this, right? I would think this would be a wonderful advantage for anybody that wants to develop. It's another incentive for them to do something. So I don't know. That's where I fall with this. I'm sure there's many questions that we can look into, but
Yeah, I have
Yes.
a copy of the application given to you. If you gentlemen would like to see one as well, I have an extra here to look at. As you can tell from the application, it's quite thorough.
Yep.
So Brian and I will have to sit down and discuss these items and figure out the best approach for it.
You're talking
So-
about the RERZ. I apologize for being late. Something came up at the last minute at the office.
no problem.
We started with item 2, Mr. McFerrin.
We skipped item number 1.
Okay. And that's the RERZ.
Yes.
Yes.
What's the consensus so far? I apologize for making you.
We're just kind of having some few questions, figuring out what it is, making sure that our zone qualifies. We had to kind of justify how far we are from the river to where the state's going to look at it, right? They're still under examination or whatever. They're going to determine if we qualify for that.
I think we're at the application part, right? It's
Right.
like they
They
don't have a
approve-
dispute with the area we're talking about. Now we just need to go through the formal process of
Right.
the application.
I guess the initial dispute was how we were going to form our zone based
Okay.
on their parameters, and I think they kind of gave us a little bit of leniency
Gotcha.
given the fact that our uniqueness.
Yes.
So with the map that Brian submitted, that kind of kicked us off to the point where we can apply.
And
Yeah.
they understood that, when we were trying to get the Einem Canal, trying to determine with the backwaters and trying to determine a little bit there if that would qualify. That's where I think Kurt is saying that they gave us a little leniency with it by allowing us to. Now, I mean, the map is the map. I didn't do any more than just offset.
Okay.
But they were assisting us in coming up with the limits. It's not something that we submitted to them for approval. They assisted us in developing the boundaries.
And they were probably, I'm sure, not leniency. I'm sure they exercised the discretion that they have within their jurisdiction to see that we complied. It appeared to me that this particular, from the information provided by Mr. Badai, that the original zone that was approved statewide did not include LaSalle, at least if I understood the documents that he tendered. And LaSalle, and it looked like to me a corridor along Route 80, were added as potential cities wherein you could pursue this. And I did see in the materials that Rockford, was one of the cities that was originally authorized, was very pleased with the incentives that this provided and the assistance that it provided in regard to development of the area that's in the close to the river. And so I think, at least from the preliminary things I saw, it was good. Do we have definitive information on how, in regard to this zone, it works in regard to the incentives as far as what they are? I saw property tax and abatement incentives were there to a degree. How will that work, Kurt? Do you know?
I don't know specifically. That's something I would have to discuss with the gentleman that's in charge.
And I presume that once we do an application, you will have a lot more information that the city council will need
Yes.
to consider in regard to how those things work. As I understand it, from looking at it, there are certain sales tax incentives or exemptions. Do you know if those apply only in regard to the materials purchased in regard to the improvements made in regard to the property, or do they extend to potential owners of the property afterwards? Do you know?
I think the way it was kind of described to me was it operates like an enterprise zone, and giving the parameters of their program, you can only choose enterprise zone or this program. You couldn't do both. So the enterprise zones gets a lot of tax incentives to major projects, like if there was a corporation that came in and built a large manufacturer, warehousing and things like that, they could qualify for a lot of tax incentives through that. So if you already currently have an enterprise zone, which from my understanding, we don't know of anybody that has an enterprise zone in the downtown area. You would have to choose. So it
that-
kind of operates on the same basis of
Well,
that.
if it operates on the same basis as an enterprise zone, then as I understand the enterprise zone as opposed to TIF district and other types of abatements, that abatement in regard to sales tax generally applies only with the sales tax incurred in regard to the build up of the development. It doesn't go. It's not like we've given in regard to certain TIF redevelopment agreements. We've given incentives in regard to a sales tax abatement going forward.
Yeah.
Going forward. So if I'm understanding you, if it is analogous to an enterprise zone, it would only the sales tax exemption would only be in regard to the expenses incurred in regard to building up and rehabbing the property.
Correct.
And that would only be an abatement for products bought in Illinois, right? We couldn't abate taxes to other states, so.
No.
Well, not only can't you abate other states federally,
Yeah.
like there's an income tax advantage in regard to the incentives that, as I understand, are involved with this particular type of incentive, but that would, just for anybody's, not would obviously only have to be related to Illinois income tax. But the Illinois income tax is still about 5%, so that's still a significant help to developers.
Yeah. For instance, with our current public works building that's downtown, the person that would be interested in purchasing that particular property could take advantage of this program. I'm just being optimistic in the sense that this gets passed tomorrow and we have the program, but it's not going to take go that fast. But essentially, that's a very large project. There's a lot of money that would have to go into that. This would be very beneficial to that investor.
Does this program have a time limit?
No.
So like when somebody takes advantage of it, like so if they abate their taxes, are their taxes abated for you said a certain amount of time? Property tax?
Well, I say no initially in the time frame for us to apply for this. But as far as the programming itself, I don't think it's continual in the sense that you're saying. I'll
Those
ask.
are things that need to be investigated. How does the real estate tax abatement work? How is it implemented? How is it applied for? And who would, we have to have a zone administrator too. We need to set up how that's going to be and who it's going to be. I mean, there seem to be a lot of questions in regard to this, but it certainly seems to be, from everything I saw preliminarily and the limited information I had, to be a very worthwhile thing to pursue aggressively for the city.
I agree.
So it'd be abated for all taxing districts, or we gotta look into that? Or would
And how
just
does
be
it
the city?
interrelate with a TIF district? But
Yeah.
That'll be another. I don't know. But those are questions to ask as well if they haven't been asked.
How does the enterprise zone, like if you had an enterprise zone, is it one or the other?
Yes,
Is that citywide or is that TIF
that's
law?
that's TIF law, that you have a choice of enterprise zone benefits or TIF benefits generally.
Okay.
And I believe that's not just the city's. That's how I've understood in listening to the TIF attorneys that we've talked with and also working myself with other developers where I'm going to the city over in past years. It's my understanding you have a choice generally of one or the other under state law.
Well, I'm meeting with these guys, they as Kurt has mentioned, they did mention, similar to an enterprise zone on a couple occasions. So I guess in my mind, it's probably a TIF or enterprise zone, but I'm not sure of that, just the way they were approaching it. And when we did meet with them on a couple occasions, I don't know if you want to call them salesmen, but they did a good job at explaining how it could benefit the city and that they felt it was a good fit for us. They're not getting anything out of it other than administrating, getting us in it. So I felt comfortable with them the way they were describing it, and when we sat there, it was kind of like, yeah, why don't we do this if we're allowed to get into this? And as far as all the answers and questions, and I think a lot more of the details will come out as we apply, because there's probably going to be some parts of the application that require us to answer the questions that are here that we are not aware of what they need to know yet.
Who specifically are you working with, Brian? I was unclear in the material.
At Ben Denny.
And who is Ben Denny work with? Is it with the
He's
state?
it's through the DCEO.
Well, that's what I mean. It's a state representative. So this
Right.
isn't like this is being presented by a like when the TIFs originally started, for example, they came in presented by attorneys who represented TIFs, and they explained it to the city and or the county. In this particular case, this is coming in by an entity that really has no dog in the fight as far as making any money on it themselves. This is a representative of the state government indicating this is an incentive that the governor and the state have set up for certain communities that can potentially be an incentive for them, if I'm understanding it correctly.
You're right. That's and the feeling in the discussions with them were they were excited for the city on this. So and that's how I took it, as they weren't getting any money as part of this. This is part of their job, and introducing it to the city as a positive a way to entice business and enhance the downtown area.
He has an Illinois.gov email, so he's definitely a government employee.
That's what I thought. That's how I interpreted it. But I just wanted to make sure.
Yep. Yep. It's through the state. So him and his associate came and joined with us, and to kind of go back to the historic credit thing, we also had the representative for the state of Illinois, Shippo with us, or Landmarks Illinois with us.
To me, when I look at this, I think the property tax abatement would be a big incentive for a developer. That's something we should look into. When we get to the application process, do we put that down there? How do we figure that out? I think it'd be worthwhile to talk to other communities like Rockford, the ones that are already going on.
Exactly. I think Rockford and Peoria and Aurora are some of them that are mentioned that were in Quincy. Those are three of the ones that come to my mind that were in the initial plan. I don't know whether
Quincy's in the new one.
Good. That's right. Quincy's the new one.
The old ones are Aurora, East St. Louis, Elgin, Peoria, Rockford. Those are the ones that have been at it for like 10 years. I think it's worthwhile that we reach out to them and see what they do.
Agree with you, Mr. Chairman. That was going to be one of my suggestions. We should talk to as many of those as we can so that we can implement this if it's implemented for the city of LaSalle in a way that would benefit us considering our particular needs.
Right.
I think I've eaten in that brewery in Rockford. The building was nicely developed. There's a restaurant. I don't know what else was in there, but they had an upstairs and a downstairs restaurant area, an arcade.
Yeah. On the link that I had provided you previously on the page that they have dedicated to this program, there is a link on there about the tax questions, and I had Brent put that up there just now. It's obviously it's very wordy, but there is more information on there about some of the sales taxes and deductions and such.
So I would take it to sales tax reduction or whatever is for the actual business that goes in there, then they would get abatement on their sales tax.
Yeah.
All right. And the historical tax credit, I read there also where it's a 25% historical tax credit, and we based on the value of the building at the time. After, is it after development or before the development?
I don't know specifically. Right. I would.
Please.
Yeah.
So usually what they do is it's 25%.
You know what? It might be best you come to a mic if we're live streaming. You probably have to state your name, please.
Anna Koval. I'm with the Canal Corridor Association. So normally how at least the historic tax credits work is that you take, after you renovate the building, there's a value and you decrease it by the value at the beginning. And so that's the amount of money or
Also, the increment of the increase is what gets to.
So the
tax credit?
increase is what you get. You get 25% or 20 or whatever the tax credit is for that
Okay.
particular. So my recollection, not having looked this up or whatever, is that the other communities in Illinois that have done this before were very happy with the historic tax credit,
Okay.
which would just be the state.
Right.
And you can also apply for the federal, but that would be totally different. You'd have to go through the SHPO's office and then the National Park Service. But it doesn't mean you have to do one or the other. You should be able to do both.
Okay.
If you qualify for both, because the feds are different.
Right.
But we have a historic district here.
Yes.
So I think a lot of the buildings would qualify for the federal also.
Oh, cool. Very
And
good.
you could-
Thank
you
you.
You could sell the tax credit. You know, if you don't need it, then you could sell it, you know, for a percentage, right?
Yeah, and these are the tax credit. You know, you always say, "Oh, talk to a tax attorney," but there are for very large projects they will sell the credits. I know. I don't know how it works.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? So you're looking for a motion to go ahead and complete the application, correct?
Correct.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, well, second.
I have a motion on the floor by Alderman LaVerry, second by Alderman Jepson, to go ahead and complete the certification development application for the River Edge Development Zone. Can I have roll call, please?
Alderman LaVerie,
Aye.
Alderman Jepson,
Aye.
Chairman Patak.
Aye. Motion carried.
Now this has to go to council?
Correct. Thank you. Are there any questions? I guess any from the floor. Anybody got any comments or anything? All right. We move to item number 1 then, or second item of the evening or afternoon, I should say. Discussion potential recommendation regarding potential adoption of the ordinance and or resolution related to the Illinois Finance Authority PACE program and related matters.
So this was a program that I brought to you last time that we had met, and there was several questions regarding that I tried to answer for you. I know Jim had some specific concerns, given the fact that this program, basically all we would have to do is approve an ordinance, and then the program runs itself through the Illinois Financing Authority. So I know Jim had the opportunity to meet with the director of that, Mr. Brad Fletcher, to discuss what this program entails and how it operates, with us just having an ordinance and us really not having any much say so in it other than that. So this is a kind of another tax incentive for developers and investors and such, for projects concerning more or less environmental friendly projects. So if you wanted to put in HVAC systems or windows or things of that nature that are clean energy type projects, this is what this kind of helps to fund and in a sense rebate those investors that are buying these materials to fix up buildings.
I did have the opportunities, correct, I didn't meet with, but I talked in depth with the individual from the Finance Authority who assists in running these, and he did give me assurance, I'm relying on what I understood from him, that any city or county that enacts this, you're not going to be on the hook for whatever financing is given. You're just a facilitating an agency, which is analogous for you, Tom, who were on the council many years ago, to what we did regarding assisting first-time home buyers and things like that. It's a bit analogous to that, although by no means the same. And it also has an original genesis out of the state. So he did give me assurance on that, and that the city isn't going to be increasing its bond indebtedness by participating in some of these bonds and things like that. Those are some of the concerns I had. Other questions that I had, still, I do not have answers. Maybe Kurt has, that I had asked someone to please look into. How is it working elsewhere? Other people who have implemented, have they run into administrative issues? Has it been productive and probative for them? I know that Streeter has done it, but in conferring with at least a representative of Streeter, it was indicated that, at least to her knowledge, that Streeter hadn't had anyone taken advantage of it yet, and it's been in excess of 5 years. I was wondering if other municipalities or counties have done it. Have we talked to any of those to see whether they've run into any administrative? Has anyone taken advantage of it and found it to be a benefit? Because from what I understand here, the way it works is the party that gets involved consents to what would be a special assessment against their real estate to pay for the loan that they get from an independent entity, not from the city. And so it's the city's part is agreeing to cooperate in doing that. I am not aware, in the questions that I have asked, of any downside to a city becoming involved in this. And it is, as Kurt has said, from his standpoint, it is possibly another tool to have in the toolbox. I'm just not sure that it's not a tool that won't sit there and never be used, as opposed to how useful it would be. And I don't know for certain whether when it gets used, whether there are any operational or administrative things that cities or counties have found. And I think to know that, you would need to confer with somebody who's got it, who's actually implemented it, not someone who it's just been a tool in the box that hasn't been used yet. So that's the additional questions I would still have, unless Kurt has an answer to any of those.
I did the last time we talked about this. I did reach out to some of the communities that were on the list. I contacted several, but I was only able to speak with somebody in Peoria and Champaign. And from what I can understand, I think some of the people that I had talked to were kind of new to the position, and so they didn't have a whole lot of experience with the program itself, and didn't know of many or some or very small percentage of people using the program. In some defense, with talking with the director of this program, one of the questions was, well, why isn't people taking advantage of this? And he says, well, it's not well known yet. It's still kind of in its infancy, and not too many people are onto it yet. So that's part of the reason why, there as many questions as Jim had, as well as the experiences with other communities not having much use with the program, because it's kind of still unknown. It not people not know enough about it yet to take advantage of it.
Another concern I had heard, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, it would have to be, is that in order for, what you're basically doing is you're getting a new lender to come in to help with some of these other items that you're putting in regarding your development, in addition to what you're doing with your first mortgage and your other lenders. But one of the things I heard is that it may require consent of the first mortgagee in order to give the new lender enough priority and collateral to do it, and that was a potential issue. But I don't know if that's for sure. And if that's the case, that would be another reason why it might not get used that much, because it might be very difficult to get that first mortgagee to consent.
Yes.
Unless they were, there was other reasons why they thought maybe this would maybe really improve it and help their mortgage position too. But I don't know if that's for sure accurate. And that's a question I had. Again, though, I haven't heard anyone say that if you implement this, that it's something that is a negative for the city. It's just a question of whether you want to do it without knowing what kind of benefit you're going to get.
Yeah, reading this, I'm kind of confused. It refers to the city of LaSalle as taxing power, even though we're not levying taxes. And the IFA could issue bonds which have to be paid back. So I would think you'd have to have it's either just a loan, or you'd have to have a special assessment district where other entities nearby would be paying into it, even though they weren't using the funds.
No, I don't think other properties other than the ones involved have to pay in, but that's a question that would have to be double checked.
Yeah,
from what I understood, the only party responsible to pay on whatever loan they get is the party on the property involved. Otherwise, it'd be totally impossible to work. You're not gonna be able to.
That's what I was thinking. It looked like a special assessment district like they do for McCormick Place in Navy Pier or something like that, but we wouldn't be doing the taxes, you know?
It is as I understand it too, in the nature of a special ed assessment district, but only in regard to the property that's part of the loan.
Correct.
Like if you're dealing with McCormick Place, you wouldn't be talking about Soldier Field. You're only going to be talking about McCormick Place. So if you know, or anywhere else where the development's going to be, but if it,
If I apologize if I didn't wasn't clear on that. It is property specific. So
what I
again,
thought.
if it was the 500 Second Street Public Works building, somebody wanted to invest in that, it would be only for that property itself, not the entire downtown.
Okay, but then you end up kind of says Red Fletcher says this lien is voluntarily requested special assessment. Event of default, the capital provider can attempt to work out or pursue foreclosure, just as any mortgage lender. But you know, so I don't know what the collateral would be on a property that isn't developed yet. So, yeah.
Well, I think the property would be the real estate that the special assessment's attaching to.
So this basically would help someone that couldn't get a bank loan, I would guess, huh? Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Fletcher did speak glowingly of it. But then he's involved with the process, so. But he seemed also sincere and genuine.
Because if someone defaulted, I couldn't see how they could be assessed, so that would be bankrupt.
So Kurt, again, you're looking for a motion here to go ahead and apply?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily an application process like the other one. This is more or less us being
Passing an ordinance?
Your next steps are either to study further and get some of the questions answered, or to be comfortable enough and present it to the floor of the council and see if they want to pass it.
I feel that shouldn't we do a little more study on this, because there seems to be questions of why aren't people using it? Unless how do you guys feel about this?
Yeah,
There's a little confusion.
the way it's here, it doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
and but I wouldn't think they propose something that doesn't make sense. So it's
Exactly.
we
Kurt,
need
what are you
clarification.
suggesting? What would you like us to do?
Well, this is the second time we talked about it. If you have other concerns, specific questions, I can look into those further and bring them to the council. Or I mean, it's your pleasure. I'm just bringing this to you as another option for investors to take advantage of within the community.
I guess even just one good example, like take the public works building. What happens? Someone is going to develop it, applies for this. If they're the ones that pay it back, and it's so.
I did give you a couple examples in the
from the other
paperwork
cities,
there
right?
of other communities that did use it. The South 320 South School Street project is one of them, which was a couple years ago in Mount Prospect. And then the other one was Skokie Boulevard, the village of Northbrook, which was also a couple years ago. And it kind of lays it out for you as far as what the project was and the energy audit and things of that nature specific to the project. I can ask I can look into this further, these two projects, if you like to have more questions answered and your concerns, or it's up to you.
So I'm looking at the Northbrook one. So that seems almost like a municipal type bond or government bond for a private entity. Is that maybe how it works? Going through the IFC?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So the larger the project here, the bigger the incentive. So if someone were to say, want to work on the Kaskaskia, this could be a pretty good deal for them.
Yeah, I think mostly with anything, if you're buying in bulk, you kind of have a little bit better price rates. If you're going to put in 100 windows into a building and they're going to be energy efficient, you would want to see a little bit more of a tax break or something of that nature for that
You throw an HVAC
project.
on top of that, that's you're looking at some significant savings.
Correct.
Well, I like this a bunch. I think we should move forward with it. If anyone's got more questions, we could look into that as well.
Let's do it.
Okay. You wanna make the motion this time? Or did you?
Well, as you said, this is not an application, so,
No, it's more or less me contacting Brad and discussing further with him about the ordinance and including Jim in that
I've already got a
conversation.
draft ordinance, but I want to be discussing it with him further before we presented it to the council. We've already done workup on this. I just had
Okay,
additional thoughts to bring up to the committee to see if they wanted further investigated first. But
So
if
you
you want
don't
to
need,
move forward with an ordinance, we can, not at this meeting, we could potentially be ready by the next meeting if Mr. Fletcher gets back to us quickly with checking out the ordinance that draft that I've worked up already.
so do you need an action that the committee votes on, Jim, or not?
Recommendation would be advisable, I would say.
Yeah, recommendation that we further explore preparation of an ordinance for potential consideration by the council. Then you can report that is, it wouldn't be, it doesn't mean you're gonna approve the ordinance. Doesn't mean the committee's even gonna recommend approval of it till we have it fully prepared. And, but you can make a recommendation that it be fully explored to the extent of working on getting an ordinance prepared for the city council's consideration.
So is it fair to say, Jim, they would approve the recommendation at the next city council meeting, and an ordinance would follow at the following council meeting in February?
More likely than not.
Okay.
Unless something came up in working out the language of the ordinance that raised other questions.
Theoretically, when you approve the
That would
recommendation,
also at the same time give Kurt additional opportunity to get more information in regard to some of these other questions. It sounds to me like while he talked with some representatives of a couple other communities, they didn't really give much more answers. You know.
So theoretically,
I think we ought to try and get somebody who could give more answers at the time the ordinance is considered by the council.
I think the positive out of it was that they didn't like poo-poo the idea. They weren't against it. They just didn't have a lot of experience with anybody taking advantage
Once
of
again, I have not heard anyone tell me anything yet that gives a reason that it's necessarily puts an onerous burden on a community.
do you know how long this program's been available?
it. I want to say 10 years.
Okay,
But it would be helpful to know how others who have
Yes.
actually used it,
I agree.
if they had administrative issues that they had to work out.
Right.
Even if we're gonna implement it, it would help our staff in following through the legal protocols to make sure they know what they're facing.
Correct.
Examples you gave us are July of 23, so.
Yeah.
well, I guess we'll make a recommendation to present this to the city council with some answers to questions that we have, and then, potentially in 2 city council meetings, we'll have it on there as an ordinance.
I'll second the recommendation.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Alderman Jepson, second by Alderman Laverie to pursue the Illinois Finance Authority PACE program. Roll call, please.
Alderman Laverie,
Aye.
Alderman Jepson,
Aye.
Chairman Patak.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other, that's it for the agenda, correct?
Yep. Public comment.
That's any comments?
I want to thank Kurt real quick for this. Seems like some new tools for the bag here to incentivize some development in our city. This is good stuff.
Yeah, I'd say these are 2 very well beneficial opportunities that makes our community more attractive.
Big
I
time.
agree. Thank you. Okay, then, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor, Alderman Laverie to adjourn, second by Alderman Jepson. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.